you don't have to choose like to embrace what makes you come alive and embrace like an intentional, walk with Jesus. Like let's put those together.
Welcome to the Workmatters Podcast, where you will hear real-life stories from everyday people in different roles and industries share the challenges of practically integrating their faith and work. Each week together, we'll wrestle over what God is doing in us and with us while we work. So let's dive in. Well, Daryl and I are so excited to get to spend time with a good friend of ours and a faith and work champion, Ben Kirksey. Thanks, Ben, for being on the Workmatters Podcast.
Yeah, it's good to be with you guys.
Man, we're glad to have you and have a great conversation lined up with Ben. Ben was with Workmatters for over a decade and is the co-founder of the Workmatters Institute. During his time at Workmatters, Ben was instrumental at shaping and leading the teams that developed the Workmatters Conference, Workmatters U-Version, Workmatters Studies, and the launch of Workmatters down in Central Arkansas. We're so thankful for his leadership and influence, which helped shape who we are today. Ben, we are so thankful for you. And currently, Ben is a general manager at the Wesche Company, a second-generation, family-owned, full-service distributor of doors, hardware, and building specialties for commercial construction. Got that right? Mm-hmm. He also spent a season with Teach for America, and learned early in his career about account management, market research, client services, and how to holistically think about faith and work while he was at North Star Partnering Group and associated businesses. Ben serves on the board for New Beginnings, which exists to create neighborhoods that end homelessness, and is the proud father of two amazing sons who hunt and play sports and do all kinds of boy stuff. Am I right?
You got it.
Did I leave anything out?
No, we're good.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben.
Well, most of what I know about faith and work, you taught me, or I caught from you. And so this is a real privilege, Ben. And so a lot of us, especially in Northwest Arkansas, kind of know you kind of freeze-framed as this faith and work guy, But take us back. Give us an overview. How did you come to faith? What were some major turning points in your life as you grew? Just give us a sense of how did you become who you are?
Yeah. So faith story, kind of. I grew up in small town Arkansas, very deeply rooted in, cousins across the street, grandparents a quarter mile away, other grandparents 3 miles away, lifelong friends, that sort of thing. And, I grew up, I would say, in a very moral home. We went to church. I kind of became a Christian, if you will, when I was 12, because that's kind of what you did. And I think God in His grace, I was definitely a deep why question asker, but I think that, God never let my brain get too far ahead of where He needed my heart to be. And so a lot of the things that I sort of wrestled with, like intellectually and things like that about the faith, never kept me from letting go of it. But I would say that I truly became a Christian before my senior year of high school. Just a lot of those kind of why questions found resolution. And going into college, it was just a deep exploration of, okay, what does it mean to actually embrace this faith? Mm-hmm. I think, as I've told people before, I didn't have language for it at the time, but even from when I was 17, 18 years old, I felt so strongly that if this faith is real, if Jesus actually did what He says that He did, then it has to matter for all of life. It can't just matter for what we believe or what happens after we die. It has to matter now for all of life. And then the second conviction is that if you're not close to people on the margins, then you're missing something about the heart of God. And so again, I wouldn't have been able to articulate at the time that these were theologies of justice and vocation, or faith and work, or things like that. But I think that that's what God was birthing in me. And so, through college, I was really fortunate to be able to be involved in a lot of things, be involved in some things that were explicitly faith development oriented, like Crew, and then get to see how that gets expressed and lived out through different internships or the fraternity house or whatever the case may be. And I would say that through my adult life, like from that point on, you could look at me like maybe Peter when Jesus calls him. You know, he doesn't have all the answers, but when Jesus calls him, he's like, yes, I'm going to orient my life around you. And it's fruitful and it's good. And there's a lot of good things. But for Peter and also for me, there comes a point where, in part because of your own choices and in part because of just stuff that happens, you find yourself in a pretty hard place. And so for me, that was 4 years ago. Went through, some personal stuff, some hard stuff at work. But the biggest and most consequential thing just being the ending of a marriage that wasn't expected and but happened.
Yeah.
But I think that where I would say now and what that major turning point was from a faith standpoint was kind of like Peter after the resurrection, where he's sitting on the beach and he knows, like, he's got a clear view of who he is.
Yeah.
And he knows his capacity to hurt the person closest to him. His capacity to, even in his desire to do right, to really screw it up. But what he gets from Jesus is just like this pursuit and this love and this embrace and this restoration. And so like there is a level of communion with God and knowing God and faith that I like, while I would never ask for that path, I don't know how it happens outside of something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, those would be kind of the three main chapters, if you will, like kind of that initial turn at 17, that kind of zealous 20s, 30s, and then just like really having to navigate some, some tough stuff in the late 30s. And so here we are, just trying to work it out, stay out of the ditches.
You mentioned, and Brandon mentioned, your time with Teach for America, but you found yourself in a little beach town as part of your journey, and Art in the Park. I mean, just kind of thread that needle for us of working with folks and being in genuine relationship with people that are on the margins, and how that kind of played more into your development.
Yeah.
That's who you are. I mean, that's part of life for you, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's looked different in different seasons for sure. But again, like back to just kind of that senior year of high school, freshman year of college, I don't know if there was like a specific thing that happened. Like I remember spring break my freshman year in college, me and some other folks with crew did this sort of urban immersion spring break in inner city Chicago. And there were a couple of things that happened there, some specific people I met that, like, this stuff builds, right? Yeah. Like even when we think back to like a turning point moment or a kind of a eureka moment, like it's not just that moment. That stuff has been building for a while, and that's kind of when it all clicks. And so for me, I think there was a kid that I interacted with at a school in Lawndale in neighborhood in Chicago that just for whatever reason, that's just when it clicked. If you're not in proximity with people on the margins, you're missing something about the heart of God. And so whatever I was pursuing in college at that point, if it was medicine, I want to have time at the free health clinic. If it's business, I want to understand like more about social entrepreneurship or be with, the folks at the homeless center. There was just sort of this question of like, okay, what does this look like expressed in that, in that capacity? And so leaving college, I wanted to do something that could maybe help me give some clarity on who I was, but that had some justice orientation to it. And so there were a number of things I was looking at. Teach for America was the one that really made the most sense.
Yeah.
Ben, when I listen to you and just knowing each other, your description of Peter, who is called the Rock, and I think that is descriptive of you. You're a rock, you're steady. I know you as a deep, deep thinker. I also love just hearing your story, how your faith wasn't just something you believed. You wanted to see how your faith really played out, especially in the marginalized, but really played out in the work that comes along with that in the lives of people. And so when did you, or was there a point where you just realized, wow, my faith and work are never separated?
Yeah.
They have to be, it is all one.
Yeah. Again, like when I talk about this stuff, like when any of us do sort of in retrospect, it's like we have language now we didn't have.
Right. Absolutely.
But so I wouldn't have said, faith and work or vocation or like any of these things. But I do remember, Brandon, this was after my senior year of high school. And like I was lifeguarding and I was also managing this small blueberry farm that my brother and I had managed every summer on our property. I'd made some deliveries in Fort Smith, which was, about 20 miles away from where I grew up. And I went to get some lunch at an Arby's on Rogers Avenue. And so from where I'm sitting, you can see a lot of different businesses, but like the main thing I'm looking at is this hospital construction. So they're doing a big addition on a hospital there. And it just kind of hit me. Like, I'm thinking about, whatever kind of healthcare services that are going to be done and like the good work, that the doctors and the nurses and all these folks are doing. And then I'm like, well, they don't have a place to be unless there's like administrators kind of making all this stuff happen. Unless there are operators that are keeping the business going. Unless there are architects and contractors and steel workers and, people hanging drywall that are building this thing. Unless there are civil engineers and city planners that are, point being is that like, I remember that very clearly. Like it just was one of those coming together moments when you realize like, wow, every one of these jobs like is indispensable to that end result of someone getting healthcare. Like, God's in all of that.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, like that was sort of that moment where it was like, okay, if this faith stuff is real, it has to matter for all of life.
Yeah.
Like it can't just be, I check a box, I'm good when I die, now let's kind of shove that aside and, just, it doesn't, at least too many questions.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So
we mention the Workmatters Institute almost every podcast in some way.
Yeah.
And that's what you hired me to do, was to come and run that program.
That's right.
And we've had a number of iterations of that. But tell us the dream. Tell us how that all came to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, yes, I'm a co-founder, but even my being involved is somewhat happenstance. I remember there's a guy named Josh Folliart who is just a phenomenal leader and man. And he came to where I worked, North Star Partnering Group, which was, you've had Henry Ho on the podcast. Henry was a co-founder of that company. And, they were really endeavoring to try to holistically build a company that holistically integrated faith and work. And so Josh came to North Star essentially with an idea to create a program for college students to create more North Stars. And so he and my direct boss, Clay Bell, were sort of sketching this out. And I kind of walked into the room. I'm like, hey guys, what are you doing? and Josh told me, and I'm like, that's it. And so the three of us, really concepted, what would this program look like? Josh and I led it together that first summer, the pilot summer. And then after that, Josh kind of stepped back and then I led it from there. And so it was, for me, what I really took hold of was, I remembered like how critical my involvement with Crew was as a freshman in college, as I'm trying to figure out, what does it look like to even like have a relationship with Jesus?
Right.
And so there's community and there's teaching and there's practices and there's, all these things that like that Crew helps equip you to do. And so now I can, as a freshman in college, have some sort of like handhold for going into my fraternity house and being intentional about how I live. Well, my experience in college, like many others, was like, okay, well, I've done that freshman year. Now I don't want to go do another summer project. I need to go get an internship, or I want to study abroad, and there just wasn't really a path to be able to do that with that same intentional way. There's this pressure, still is this pressure, actually, I think, in a lot of cases, for folks that are very committed in their faith to go a vocational ministry route.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this pull for a lot of people who are like, well, yeah, I want to do that. I want to be intentional. I want to see people come to know Jesus. I want to see this redemptive, flourishing work. But I also really come alive when I'm building things,
Mm-hmm.
When my finance class, when that merchant from Walmart came and spoke, there's something in me that lights up. And so what we said with that original iteration of the Institute was well, hey, that's a false choice. You don't have to choose to embrace what makes you come alive and embrace an intentional, walk with Jesus. Let's put those together.
Yeah.
And so that's what it was. It was essentially taking a summer project experience where you'd have community, you'd have small groups, you'd have teaching, you'd have a curriculum. But that was woven into an internship experience in their field of interest. And so, again, let's put these things together.
Yeah,
I love that. I'd like to recognize and thank Simmons Foods, Inc. for being our exclusive sponsor for this season of the Workmatters Podcast. Their generosity is making this new season of meaningful content and inspiring guests possible. We hope people are encouraged to see work as a place where God shapes them more into His image, in their work, at their work, and through their work. Simmons Foods, Inc. is a family-owned and led company based in Siloam Springs, Arkansas, supplying poultry, pet, and animal nutrition products to customers in all 50 states and more than 40 countries around the world. Please visit simmonsfoods.com to learn more about our wonderful sponsor. Thank you. And I know I've heard y'all's story of working together. And I mean, you guys have gone through this over and over and over. You've led so many people through, hundreds of people.
Yeah. We're coming up on 1,000.
Coming up on 1,000. I mean, that's congratulations. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, that is.
And you guys you've gone back and you've changed this and you've changed that. And you've had people come and speak. You've spoken. You've had people tell stories out in the business community. And what I love about all of that is that people, Christ followers, I mean, we genuinely, we want to honor God. We want to know what God wants us to do with our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And you took the Workmatters Institute and you helped guide people.
Yeah.
You helped point them in a direction to show them that they could choose any vocation and honor God with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a lot of times with young people, and I mean, even older people like us getting the gray hairs and stuff, we even think man, to really serve God, I need to go into crew. I need to go into the ministry. I need to become a pastor. I need to go overseas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what you did with Workmatters Institute is said you can serve God right where you are.
Right.
In the vocation He's placed you in right there.
Yeah.
What do you think when I say that? What comes to mind when I say
Well, what comes to mind is my the gaps in my theology of work when Ben took a risk and hired me. I understood that God was doing something in me in my place of work, dealing with hard things and submitting to my boss. And I understood the formative piece of that. I understood the opportunity to be a part of someone else's story and maybe get a chance to share about Jesus. What I didn't understand was the value of the actual work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's around the barn of saying what you just said. That I remember one young lady early on in my time at Workmatters, and she was a produce buyer at Walmart. And she finally realized that work mattered to God.
Mm-hmm.
Feeding people fresh produce was kingdom work.
Yeah.
And she had to almost unlearn what she had been discipled with to embrace this idea that, I am honoring God with what I do at Walmart. So thank you for that.
You have any additional thought to that, Ben, when we were talking about all that?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of where my head went, Brandon, is that like, I mean, we have a capacity like to idolize just about anything.
Oh yeah, boy, is that true.
And so, like in the same vein as like there is such beauty and truth and goodness, like in helping people see, like, yes, you can honor God right here.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that like that we have to watch out, for folks that are just looking for an excuse to justify something that they really don't need to be doing.
Good thought.
Some people need to let go of that job.
Yeah.
Some people need to embrace it. Yeah. Some people, need to understand that, yes, God actually cares about this right here.
Yeah.
Some people need to realize that what God would maybe prefer I do is be a little more bold about pursuing some sort of restorative work here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that I'm thinking back on different stories as you say that, Daryl, for folks that have made all of those connections, that realized they were committed to stay, that realized they needed to leave, that realized they had, whatever. I think it's fun to see.
So you had incredible influence in your leadership at Workmatters. You've helped to shape Workmatters, incredible influence through the Workmatters Institute. And now you've transitioned and you've moved into leading and having influence in a new role as general manager at the Wesche Company. And how's that been? What's God been doing in you? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a great transition. Like it really has. I think as I was going through that season, in late 23 and early 24, just trying to get, trying to sense out like what is that right next thing. I mean, God was so gracious, through different people, and feedback and other open doors, just to like really hone in on kind of what the ideal fit for me would be in this next season. And this role has been that. And I would say that like from a very early stage, the stuff that I was hoping for was true. But what's been especially surprising and delightful is just how much I enjoy the actual industry that we're in. It's just a ton of fun. It really is. I think in working with Jacob, he's our president, owner. His parents started Wesche 30 years ago. He's been running it the last 6. He's a friend. He's someone I trusted. He did our institute a few years ago. And so getting to, partner with him and really building this next generation of Wesche, like it's been so much fun. And then, learning the actual work that we do and kind of trying to accelerate up that learning curve and to where I can actually provide some value has been a challenge and has been a lot of fun too.
I remember we had lunch one of the days when you were doing your rotations, and we sat down and you said, I learned how to pick a lock today.
That's right. That's a valuable skill.
It is.
That seems perfect. One of the things that we've been talking a lot about, and I'm going to say it out loud here, is how white collar the faith and work movement is.
Yeah.
And that's not your world. You work with craftsmen and tradesmen and people who work hard with their hands, who can't necessarily take off a half a day for a conference or something like that.
Right.
What would be good for us to know as we wrestle through, what does this faith at work for all people look like? What insight could you give, or just give us a glimpse into your world?
That's a great question.
Yeah, no, that is a good question. I think it is interesting, like kind of being on this side of things. Because like even at Workmatters, one of the things I love the most in that season was getting to sit across the table from someone and really, kind of get a window into their world.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I was pretty good at being able to understand that and empathize and all of that sort of thing. But it's just it's a whole different experience to live it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the crunches of time that you feel, the different pressures that you feel, all of that stuff just resonates in a much different way. So a couple of things came to mind as you were asking that. I remember when we first launched the Workmatters studies years ago, Central States Manufacturing was a big partner at that time. Well, Central States, they're a much bigger operation than we are at Wesche, and from a people standpoint, but it's a similar split. They have folks that are, on salary that maybe look more like a white collar worker. They have folks that are hourly. They have, people on a production line. They have people driving trucks. And one of the pieces of feedback we got at that time was like, hey, these studies are great, but most people got 30 minutes to eat lunch. There's not, we can't take that hour and a half coffee break.
Right.
Right. We can't go work at Starbucks or wherever.
Yeah.
We're just come in late. And so I think that the real constraint of time is one thing, but the bigger thing that came to mind that I don't know that we talked about then, but that I think is very clear now, is that it's just a classic Maslow hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
And the reality is that there are a lot of folks, and whether it's like a time crunch or it's a financial crunch or whatever, that there are just lower level needs that have to get met first. And so even asking the question about faith and work just doesn't even make sense in a lot of ways. Now, how that gets translated into, creating the type of culture that faith and work would lead to. That makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
That's good.
But a 4-day devotional on love at work,
Yeah.
that's not really top of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good insight. Absolutely good insight. So we've got folks listening, and they've heard your journey. Hopefully you've experienced some of Ben through going through the Workmatters Institute, but there will be some that haven't yet, but they're curious and they want to understand this better. What's a couple of things? What's a 2 or 3 things that they could start doing even today?
Yeah.
To start connecting what they believe with what they do. What's 2 or 3 things you'd tell them?
Yeah, for sure. So when I started at Wesche, I remember I told myself this and I told my kids this. I knew that Jacob's vision for me and kind of his, the way that he had crafted this out was really to have a pretty long runway in terms of we weren't in any sort of existential need. He needed to increase his leadership capacity. He needed to build for the future of the company. I didn't have to I had space to come in and learn the business and really build rapport and do those sorts of things. What I told my boys was, and even though I'm coming from a Workmatters, and it'd be very easy for me to just chart out a whole list of stuff to kind of go and do.
I bet.
Is look, what I need to do is I need to work really hard and to consistently care about people, care for people. And I need to, learn our business. And so I just share that because those first 2 pieces, I think, for anyone that's just looking to get started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's can you actually approach the work in bringing your best to the work? Not just getting through it, not just checking a box, not just using it as a platform for something else, but if you're going to be there, bring your best thinking, bring your best self, bring your best to the work. And that's going to do 2 things. Number 1, that's going to energize you. That's going to serve others through the quality of what you do, whatever it is. And it's going to build credibility. And it's also going to give you feedback as to whether or not this is a great fit. So bringing your best to the work. And then secondly is caring for the people around you. I don't care who you are or where you find yourself in the world at whatever season of life. Communion with God and caring about others are just like, that is the outflow of how we are designed to be.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, which kind of gets to my third piece, which is just prayer. So, I would say that, like, the central goal of life is union with Jesus, and so how do we experience that? How do we experience union with Him, communion with Him, day in and day out? Like, hone it in on some sort of prayer rhythm, caring about people, bringing your best to the work. Like, I think that's really where you start.
I love that. I love that. So bring your best, learn your trade well.
Yeah.
And do it really well.
Mm-hmm.
Love and care for people and learn how to commune with God throughout your day, because that's your greatest heart's and soul's desire.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Ben, you have been just so instrumental in my life and so many others. You've been a good friend. You've been a great leader, and you still are. And I love where God is doing that with you right now at the Wesche Company. I think it's awesome. Yeah. So thank you for your time with us. This has been awesome. And I love the fact that we've got folks that haven't gone through the Workmatters Institute, but you need to, and you will see the fingerprints of these two guys all over it. And so I'm really thankful. But we always end our time with get to know you questions, which I did not prep you for in advance, but you got to answer them. So you ready?
You can ask me anything.
I know I can. And I love that about you.
Any topic. All right. I'm ready.
Do you bring your lunch or do you go out to eat? And what's one thing people might be shocked to know that you love to eat at lunch?
Well, you're trying to bait me.
I totally am.
You should ask me these questions about him.
Should. I'm baiting you, Ben. Come on.
No, you're baiting me, man. And what Brandon is trying to get me to say is that, yes, I do bring my lunch, and it's always like some kind of spinach salad and fruit and sardines.
Sardines. That's where I was going with it. Yes, thank you, Ben.
I know, but hey, look. They're cheap, they're healthy, they're sustainable.
They are. They are.
Wrong?
Listen, the staff was like, oh, you got to ask them about this, okay? And then especially making sure that when you put it in the trash, you take the trash out at the end of the day when you throw it away.
Well, buddy, I always take that trash outside.
You always got to do it.
I don't ever throw it away inside.
Okay, here's another question. What new hobbies have you tried within the last year or so? Because you're a try a new hobby guy.
I don't know if I've tried any new hobbies in the last year or so. I'm doing a lot of stuff on my home. So I've kind of got a new vision for how to remake my home.
There you go.
And, that's sort of finding this happy intersection of maximizing budget, getting it done, and learning how to do stuff myself. So there's been a few things like building related that I'd never really done or learned before that I've done the past year.
There you go.
Yeah, that's been good.
I knew there was something out there. That's really good. And I know you'd love to read. What's a good book that you read in the last year or two? And by the way, I haven't asked a book question to anybody I think in a really long time. I think it's been a really long time. So last couple of years, what's a really good book that you've read that you enjoyed?
Yeah. Fiction, nonfiction, theology, anything. All right. Well, I'll give you two. My reading goes in like fits and starts. And, I might pour through 3 books in a month, or I might go 3 months and just read one book. But in January, I read a couple of books that were both fantastic. And so I'll share those. One was How Big Things Get Done. So this is the guys looking at like mega projects, Olympics, nuclear plants, things like this. And, just parsing out like the ones that are on time and on budget versus the ones, which the majority are, by the way, which are way over time and over budget. But it's applicable to stuff in your personal life. It's applicable to Workmatters stuff. But How Big Things Get Done. And the second one is a book by Frederick Bachman called My Friends. So this is a fiction book, and it's, if you have folks that are long-term or lifelong friends, or or if it's something that you want, which is probably all of us.
Sure.
You know? I mean, it's the type of book where you're laughing out loud on one page and you're, fighting back tears on the next.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, Ben, thank you so much. Thanks for being on the Workmatters podcast and for your continued leadership. We just so appreciate you. And if you want to go through the Workmatters Institute, you can do that right now. Go to workmatters.org. You can sign up, go through it yourself on demand right now, or you can take your church small group through it, or folks at your company. Go to workmatters.org. We'd love to see you there. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you for joining the Workmatters podcast. Make sure you subscribe to get notifications when we launch new episodes. Start living out your faith through your work in practical ways by starting the Workmatters Institute online today. You can do this and learn more about upcoming forums, webinars, and conferences by visiting workmatters.org.